Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ellen and in this video I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of August. I apologize for the weird lighting. It is nighttime and my daughter, she's been teething, so I've been having some difficulties filming this, so hopefully I can get this done and filmed for you guys. It's been a rough week, not gonna lie. She's getting 3 molars in at once. And if you have any kids and been through the teething process, you'll know it can be a little difficult. So anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So the first book I read in the month of August was For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. I gave this book 4 stars. This book is about a kingdom in which if the king and queen of the kingdom have 2 daughters, then the oldest daughter gets to take over the throne and the youngest daughter is sacrificed to like this dark and creepy forest where there is a wolf. And no one really knows what goes on beyond the forest. There are some legends that occurred and superstitions, but no one really knows for sure because any time a second daughter goes into the forest, she's never heard from again. And so this book follows Radaris, or Red, and her sister Nivara, or Neve, and they are twins, but Nivara was born first, so she gets to take over the kingdom. So growing up, Red knew that she was just going to be sacrificed to the wolf, so she wasn't considered important. People were almost afraid to interact with her. They didn't really know how to interact with her. So yeah, this book follows Red, and as she goes into the forest, she kind of discovers that a lot of the legends and superstitions that she grew up believing are actually not accurate, and she meets the wolf. And it kind of kicks off from there. I don't want to reveal too much. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good, but there were moments where I felt like it read a little young. I felt like this story would have benefited from being an adult novel. I felt like it could get even darker. I did like the dark and twisted atmosphere of the forest. And there are some trigger warnings, I think, for people that are a little queasy with blood. There is some cutting and bloodletting involved with this magic. So if you're a little queasy about reading about that, then this might not be a book I would recommend for you. But yeah, I do think it could have gotten even darker and it would have made the story go just the next step further if it was an adult novel, but I still think it was pretty good. The love interest and like the love that goes on, I hope it kind of matures in the next book because Red is 20, but you don't really get the feeling that she's 20 based on some of the descriptions and like how they act. So that's another reason why I took off a star. But all in all, it's a good book and I will be reading the next one when it comes out next year. Let me refer to my notes here. The next book I read was Sandpiper Cove by Irene Hannon. This is the 3rd book in the Hope Harbor series, and I gave this one 5 stars. It's not really a surprise, but I think this one is my favorite so far. We follow Lexi, who is the chief of police in Hope Harbor. Then you follow Adam, and he recently moved to Hope Harbor in the last 18 months. You find out that he got out of prison and he has a felony. And upon arriving to Hope Harbor, he's hoping for a fresh start. He's working on construction and he's just wanting to rebuild his life. He recently found his faith in God and he's just trying to make better choices and live a better life for himself. And you find out that Lexi has a son and there's a dark story on what happened with her husband. You get to hear more about Adam's past and you kind of get to figure out their own story before they kind of come together, because the chief of police dating an ex-con, it's not exactly what you would consider the ideal match off the bat, but you really realize that they both really complement each other and they both have things that they had to overcome. And I just thought it was a beautifully written story. I think if I had to give any complaints about it, it would just be I felt the ending was a little rushed. I felt like it could have wrapped things up a little cleaner at the end, but again, it's still a really great story and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read If you saw my vacation reading vlog, you know I went to the Oregon coast at the beginning of August with my family, and we stayed at a beach house. And at this beach house, they had a bookshelf full of books. And on this bookshelf was a book that really caught my eye because it was about something that I never really thought would be in a romance genre. And this book series is called the Amish Bachelors series. So it's a book series about some men that are in the Amish community. And I've never read anything with Amish people before, to be honest with you, but it really piqued my interest. So I picked up the book that they had. I think it's technically like the third book in the series, but it kind of seems like Hope Harbor, where each book is set with a different person, so I don't think you have to read them in order. So the book that I read is called An Amish Harvest, and it is by Patricia Davids. And in this book, you follow a woman named Rebecca and a man named Samuel. Samuel is a carpenter, and he is doing work for his family. It was his idea to try to expand the carpentry business on his family's property. And then he was injured to the point where there was like an explosion that happened, and his eyes and his hands got severely burned because he went to protect his eyes. And then he's blinded. So he is pretty devastated by this, especially when he has so much riding on, you know, doing his work so his family could be in a better position. They put a lot of money investing into his idea for carpentry, and so he's a little bit bitter about his ailment and bitter just about the experience that he had. So since he is blind and he can't really take care of himself, the family asks this young widow named Rebecca to come and help them. Being a widow in the Amish community, she makes her money by helping taking care of people, whether that's a new mother, a sick elderly person, etc. She helps that family for however long that they need her for, and then when that ends, she goes and tries to help somebody else. Her husband died pretty young in their marriage, and so she has experience with taking care of sick people. So Samuel's parents asked for Rebecca's help, and she is an interesting character. Like, she is a strong woman. She is the type of woman that I wouldn't think an Amish person would be like, which, don't get me wrong, I am not at all familiar with the Amish culture, what people are like. I have no idea, but just the image I have in my head, Rebecca's just strong-willed. She says what's on her mind. She's not afraid of Samuel and his biting tone. He is showing his bitter side to her, but she's like, you're fine. Just feel along the wall, take 2 steps this way and you'll reach this. And she doesn't baby him like his family does. And Samuel kind of realizes like he can start to do things on his own. Anyway, I gave this book 5 stars. It's a short read. It was less than 300 pages, but I just loved Rebecca's character. Like, I just really loved how strong she was and all the things that she went through. And I really started to like Samuel as well. The character development that he went through from his accident into becoming the man that he ended up being at the end of the book. So that was a really nice surprise in finding a book at the beach house just on a random bookshelf that they had. So that was really fun for me to discover. The next book I read is Duchess by Day, Mistress by Night by Stacy Reed. I listened to this through my library on audiobook, and this book, another 5-star read. Like, I don't know what it is about historical romance books, but they really hit the spot for me through audiobooks. Like, the voice narration is usually really good, and I just love this story. So we follow Georgiana, who is the Duchess of Hardcastle, which I just have to point out, I really love how in this story, it's actually the woman that's in a higher ranking position and not the man, because I kind of feel like it's more like a lower class woman liking a duke or a baron or something like that. So Duchess of Hardcastle, her name is Georgiana. She is a 26-year-old widow. She lost her husband 4 years earlier, and she has I believe 5 or 6-year-old son named Nicholas, who will be the future Duke of Hardcastle. And she is really lonely. She allowed herself to grieve, but her family is very, very prim and proper. Like, you do not do anything that will do any harm on your reputation. You don't have secret affairs. You don't gamble. You don't do anything that could even remotely taint our family name. But then comes Rhys Tremaine, who his mother had some kind of connections, but his father didn't. And he has a very dark past. And you'll find out when you read it. I don't want to give spoilers, but he has a dark past. So he pretty much grew up poor, and he's working his way up. And he is called the broker because how he earns his reputation and his money is by trading secrets. So he spends his time finding secrets about all these high-ranking people, and he exchanges secrets for other favors and things like that. And that is how he gains his power in society. And they cross paths and sparks fly, even though Georgiana is kind of afraid about the implications on a relationship with a man like Rhys would do to her family, and especially her young son. Georgiana's mother and her older brother are both very strict. And yeah, but in the end, of course, things end up working out. But I really loved this story. I really loved how the main character, Georgiana, is wrestling between her duties, trying to be a good role model for her son and trying to do the right thing, what was considered at that time, but also trying to follow her heart and her passions and things that make her happy. Because I feel like women back then had a really hard time. Like, our happiness, women's happiness were just not a priority back then. But I really loved that journey that Georgiana took. So another 5-star read for me. I really enjoy Stacey Reid's writing, so I definitely want to read more by this author. The next 3 books I'm going to talk just very briefly because I DNF'd them all. I did not finish. The first one is My American Duchess by Eloisa James. This book is about, I don't really know what it's about because I DNF'd it pretty early. It's about this woman, I don't even remember her name, but she's in England. She is from America, but she has a title and she's already engaged to somebody. And that's all I really know because the writing style for this just did not work for me. I was listening to this on audiobook, but this woman, in the very beginning, I had to DNF it because any conversation that she has with somebody, she has to insert this really weird fact about anything, and it's not related to the conversation that she's currently having. And it just bothered me so much. And I think that the narrator just also irked me. So I just DNF'd this early. To be honest with you, I do not fully know what this book is about, but I don't care to find out, to be honest. The next book I DNF'd is A Little Life by Hanayanagihara. And this book has been floating around BookTube for a really long time. I've had it on my shelves. I've read like the first 40% of this book last year, and I did what I would consider a soft DNF. Like, I didn't stop finishing it and did not intend to pick it up ever. I was just feeling like, okay, this is really overwhelming. This has so many triggering content, just bad past, suicide, cutting. Like, this has so many trigger warnings and it was getting to be too much. So I put it down with the intention of picking it back up. And then in August, I tried to read it again, and I just decided, you know what? Just because everyone else is reading it does not mean that I have to read it or finish it. I know people say it's great, but I just had to get rid of it. So I took it to my used bookstore for book credit, and I'm okay with that. That is the exact same way for Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I also read like the first half of it. It was all right. It wasn't blowing me away, but it was starting to get kind of interesting. But then it was just slowly losing my interest again. I put it down and I said I'd pick it up. It's been a year later. I tried again. Again, my interest was not piqued, and so I also got rid of that one. But I will end this video on a high note. I finally finished Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So I included Warbreaker in my September TBR video because I did not think that I could finish it. I recorded my September TBR video like on the 28th or 29th, something like that, and I didn't think I would be able to finish Warbreaker by then. But I did, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It's mostly about these two sisters, Vivenna and Ciri. They live in this kingdom with a wonderful magic system. It has to do with colors and breath. It's a little confusing, but once you read it, you really start to get the hang of it. Anyway, the oldest sister, Vivenna, was betrothed to the God King in a neighboring kingdom. They are ostracized from that kingdom. They were originally the rulers of that kingdom before there was a great war. So they were separated and they are trying to prevent war. So Vivenna's father, the king, betroths her to the God King of this other kingdom to try to prevent war. But the father instead sends Vivenna's youngest sister, Ciri, in her place because he couldn't stand to send Vivenna there. And so Vivenna, having lost her whole sense of identity because she grew up believing that was her duty to go marry the God King, she goes to the kingdom Hollindren to go after her sister and try to see what she can do because she doesn't want to be useless. And this book was just so much fun. The banter, this book made me laugh so much, and I did not expect that from a fantasy book. And this was my first adult fantasy book and my first Brandon Sanderson book, and I am hooked. I think I'm understanding the hype with him, and I'm really excited to read more. Mistborn is on my list for this month in September, so I'm really excited to read more Brandon Sanderson. So that is it, everyone. Those are the books that I read or tried to read in the month of August. Are these books that you have tried before, or are these going to be on your list for the future? Please comment down below and let me know. And if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to my channel. I would love to talk with you more, and I would love to see you around. Until next time, guys. Bye.